Well, good evening. We think there's something new that sort of came out of nowhere. I don't know what that was. Hopefully, we can get you on here now with Kevin. France Beard will join us. Kevin, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you fine. I just hopped on the computer now. Obviously, big news, right? Did you see Xavian Lee
Yeah.
just committed to the Gators?
Yes, I did. I was going to break that. I'm just going on the Open right now. I'm trying to play the Open, get the show started. Huge news. Kevin just scooped himself. We'll have France Beard. Big show. A lot of breaking news tonight. And this guy here was responsible for a lot. Also, Allie Pete Wilbur joined us. We got Dan Bond talking about, don't forget, there's a national championship still available out there. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can get racked up here and go again.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to the program. We're here to break the news. I hope we're live. Something happened on the channel. I got somebody else's show. Cameron Skarbinski. I don't know. It's always a surprise here, but I know this much. These two guys know everything about Florida basketball. And guys, let's just get it out there. Kevin's already announced it. Xavian Lee, the teammate of Tommy Hoff in high school and the point guard from Princeton, and who was not seeing some kind of video of this guy, he looks terrific, has committed today. We're hearing, and let's see who wants to go ahead and confirm that. You guys say it's true. Kevin, right? You heard that as well?
Yeah, well, they, he had a nice dinner at Spurrier's last night. They took him out in the town, and they must have convinced him. So he posted it on his Instagram account, buddy. So it's out there. And he obviously 6'4" point guard, Ivy League Player of the Year at Princeton. You mentioned Tommy Hoff's former teammate. I think he's just kind of what they need in terms of, a playmaking point guard type. And, I was hearing rumblings like Kansas and St. John's even might have offered more money. But I do think also that, it's a situation, buddy, where, I think Todd Golden, proof of concept with Walter Clayton Jr., hey, you can stay here, you can develop, and there's a lot more money to be made at the next level. I think that this is proof of that. And also legacy of being a Gator too, being in this town and what that means for life after basketball.
We're going to break all that down. I think France has a little situation there to deal with. And France, thank you for coming on the last second, confirming what you heard as well. And tell us what you think of it. And then we'll get both of you guys to tell us how significant this is. Because this appears to me, I'm not the one who's, I'm not the guy who you're trying to need to know from. It's these guys right here. France, Xavian Lee, a Gator.
Yeah, it's huge, buddy, because here's the thing about him, and I think this was one of the selling points, that he can play with Denzel Aberdeen. They can play both of them at the same time. You basically have 2 point guards who also can shoot and score. And it gives you a 6'4" and a 6'5" guy. You can play Urban Klavzar now, or you can go big with Tommy Hawk on the outside. You got A.J. Brown probably committing on Tuesday of next week. Another 6'4" guy that can really jump and do some things. Isaiah Brown, who we saw in brief segments, really has serious ability to get off the ground. But he's also a really good shooter, buddy. So, and then you bring in Lloyd and Ingram. all of a sudden Florida's backcourt, which everybody says, oh my gosh, it's been decimated. And yeah, you think about it, you just lost 45 points a game. But look what you're picking up here. You're picking up some guys that can really play. And then you go with a loaded Florida front court. And I'm told that Kondo is coming back. And you got to understand something. Kondo's got an insurance policy that nobody's talking about. He's like Tyrese Proctor up at Duke. If he doesn't like the NBA or he doesn't like college, he can go to Australia and they'll sign him to a multi-million-dollar contract already. And he's a superstar there, just like Tyrese Proctor at Duke. So you give a guy a little bit of insurance like this, and now all of a sudden, Florida looks pretty good. And I think these guys have looked at what Noah and Horford did, and they came back. And these guys, although you don't have the starting five coming back like you did with Noah and Horford, look at all the pieces you got in there. Micah Handlockton, Kondo, Tommy Hawk. If Alexis comes back, that's a real plus right there. Victor Mikic, the young kid from Croatia or Serbia that they really, really like. And they're after a Serbian kid that is really, really a stud, a 6'11" kid who a lot of people say if he's going to come to college and be a one and done or a two and through guy, and he's a stud. He's 6'11". If Big Ollie, all I think about with Big Ollie is if there's a timeout and you got the ball under the basket. Okay. Lob it up, or the other team has the ball under the basket and they got to make a long pass down court. Okay, now you got to throw something that somebody's going to have to make a fair catch on down at the other end.
You guys know about as much Gator basketball as anybody here. I know we don't have you both for very long, but I want to maximize, Francis. That's good stuff. Thank you. Everything I can. I think what the average Gator fan wants to know. I mean, does this put Florida back in top 10 contention? Does this enough for the bigs they got if the other guys come back naturally? And how huge on a scale of 1 to 10 was Xavian Lee coming back now to join his team? And we don't know. I think we'll see about what happens to Tommy Hoffa. It looks like he might. He said he'd either gets a number one pick or he's not coming back. So let's talk about that. How big is that, guys?
Yeah, I think it's certainly you look at the roster as currently projected. I think it's definitely in potential to be a top 10, top 15 team. Tommy Houck on the wing, and that could be another obviously selling point for him to come back too, would be tremendously intriguing to me, buddy. Just his playmaking ability and his ability to, be creative there. And I think Tom will play him more there. And I think that will help his stock too, especially if Alex Condon comes back. You could play Tommy Houck some at the 3 out there, and you'd have a pretty big front line too with him, Condon and Ruben Chinyelu. And that would open up probably some more minutes for Micah Handlockton, as Franz alluded to, and Sam Alexis if he decides to come back as well. So there's a lot of ways they can kind of go here. But Lee certainly gives them more options. But I think, the backcourt as it's constructed now, and if you get A.J. Brown too, you're probably 5 deep in the backcourt now because you got those two. You got Aberdeen, you've got Clavshar, and you've got Isaiah Brown, who I think will probably be more ready next year. You have a lot of depth on that team, again, which is a good problem to have. And I think Todd showed that he could navigate that last year and make everyone happy as well. And certainly winning makes people happy in that regard.
Yeah. A couple of comments here, guys, and let's see what these guys are asking about online here. Tommy Seals excited for C.J. Ingram. We talked about that. You mentioned Aberdeen. Let's see what else we got here. That's a couple of comments. Other people have questions pop on here. Great to be here. It's a great night for Gator fans. I mean, they're kind of liking this. They're kind of liking all this stuff, Kevin. I don't want to lose sight of tonight's program, the amount of breaking stories that we've got. Kevin, some of them are yours. There's a lot of breaking stories tonight. This was the biggest of the biggest, and likely, fans, to be the biggest of the week. this kid, it seems like, puts him back in contention for all the marbles.
I think Florida, Florida's been picked by a couple of people. The Athletic has Florida picked, I think, number 2 or 3 coming back for next year.
Is that too high?
Gary Parrish at CBS has Florida hovering around like 8 or 9, and a couple other people have them there. And what I think this does is it projects Florida probably to, say, the top 6 range, I would say. Because nobody's going for the second straight year, nobody's going to be able to have a front court like Florida. The question is going to be who's going to shoot the basketball and who's going to get the ball to them. And Todd, as we saw during the season, is a really creative guy at making the best of what he's got. Now, all of a sudden, with these guys, if these guys can shoot reasonably well, they can go to a pounded in the inside and dominate people on the inside offense. He's got options again, and this is what made Florida so dangerous in the run to the national championship was the Gators could adapt, and now they've added a guy that makes them adaptable again.
Right. Just recapping for those just hearing, point guard Xavian Lee of Princeton has committed to Florida. Here's another story, Kevin. He says apparently promoting Jonathan Safer. Is that his name? How do you say his name?
Safer.
Jonathan Safer. Yep.
And bringing in Dave Klatsky.
Dave Klatsky. I'm told that's not entirely done yet, but it should be done soon. The NYU coach. They're on their way of obviously, filling those holes left by Kevin Hovde and, obviously John Anderchek. But Klatsky is a guy that goes back about 10 years with Todd Golden, NYU guy, very sharp, has some recruiting ties in the Northeast. I think it's going to be a good move, buddy, for them as well in terms of, their ability to kind of reload on that coaching staff, which – Kevin Hovde was a very impressive offensive mind. He's going to be hard to replace, and Anderchek did a good job with the defense. But those two guys, I think, can be helpful for UF as well.
Yeah, he's got its numbers for him, I'm sure.
Dave Klatsky was 68-16 in 3 years as the head coach at NYU. And, buddy, you and I are old enough to remember the fact that at one point in time, before all the gambling scandals, NYU was a major powerhouse. I think their nickname is the Violets.
Violets, not violets, like ENC, the flower of violets. That struck me. I haven't heard that name that kind of nickname in a long time. So there's a big story. There's another story going around tonight that apparently, supposedly, Gregory Smith, the safety, the football player, according to one source, has coming back and signed an NIL agreement to come back to Florida. So that's a nice pick up because, the safety is looking better and better all the time. And then finally, I want to get around to Kevin's story today. These are things, this is called journalism, folks, if you ever want to know what it's about. By the way, regardless of your political party and what you think one way or the other, I think what we're all for is truth, whatever that is. And it's hard to get to the truth today. George Clooney was brilliant today and I heard he does his Broadway play about journalism. And, every now and then it requires a little journalism. That's counting things and checking things and calling. Terrific job by Kevin today on the numbers on the Florida athletic program. Kevin, you shared a lot with us online. Tell us about that.
Well, $200 million. They're over $200 million in terms of their athletic budget, and have spent just as much, pretty much. 180, about 170, 180 documented, but then also with the capital projects, about another 20 million there, raises that ante up to 200 million. But interesting, 3 women's sports generating over $1 million in revenue. And not one of them women's basketball, which you would find at most schools. But gymnastics, I think, which was interesting. Obviously women's softball and volleyball, and that just shows you, I think, the support for women's athletics if you can build a winner. And I think that's that's kind of the next step. If women's basketball, I think, can get to that level,
Yeah.
then I think they'll be over $1 million in revenue too. But
sure hope so for Kelly Ray. I like her.
Yeah, and I think the fans will come if you put that kind of. But as you know, much like the men's, I mean, women's basketball in the SEC is so tremendously difficult, led by obviously some coaching heavyweights and Dawn Staley, and of course at LSU, Kim Mulkey.
But they won't be there forever, and I'm gonna let you go, France. I know you got to get back to your mom and stuff, but I want to
just a couple minutes. I got a couple minutes to spend here.
All right, we'll have Allie coming on here in just a minute. What about the other shoe dropping on the players? Who else could Florida pick up, or is there room for anybody in basketball?
I like A.J. Brown, who's Isaiah Brown's older brother coming down from Ohio U, and he's a slasher, buddy. He's a guy that I broadcast. I broadcast a bunch of ball games down at the Villages over the years, and I had Orlando Christian Prep, and everybody was Orlando OCP had a 6'11" kid, and they had Vinell and Lubin, and everybody was talking about these guys.
Orlando Christian Prep.
These guys were the real studs, but AJ Brown was the best player on that team. He's a slasher. He gets to the rim. The big thing I like about him is he just shows up where the ball is. Reminds me a lot of Elijah Martin, only a bigger version as far as height, in that Elijah Martin just had this habit of there's a loose ball on the floor and who's there to scoop it up? Who's there a ball that needs to be punched out to somebody? Who's there to do it? And he reminds me a lot of that guy in that he just shows up where the ball is, but he's got 3-point skills. He's a real slasher. And, I heard through the grapevine that they've got a big Nigerian kid that is friends with Ruben that has 2 or 3 years. And this has got to be critical, is they got to get 1 or 2 big guys that have years of eligibility. Micah will be a senior next year unless he gets a waiver from the NCAA, which is possible. I don't think Houck and Condon are going to be here another year other than the next one. I don't think they'll be here for their senior years. So you got to get some depth in their young guys in there. So that would be, getting the big Serbian kid or he's either Serbian or Slovenian. I think he's Serbian, but getting the big Serbian kid and then getting this big Nigerian kid, that would be huge for them.
Yeah, I think I saw a quote today where it was Leif Hoff, Condon said, of course, we know he's testing the draft. He said there's no way he would go to another school, which is comforting. So it's either the NBA or the Gators for him, for sure. Now, Kevin, I want to read this quote to you and talk about the incredible intrinsic value, the tangible value of a guy like the football player, Lagway, who's so loyal to this program and the building of the layers on that program as they've done. And now basketball has the same kind of thing. It struck me today when I saw this quote from Elijah Martin. I've not seen it before. You guys may have, but I love it. And this is the kind of thing you don't expect to hear these days. His quote was, "Don't put this jersey on if you ain't ready for what comes with it." Now, I guess he said that, it must be true. It's on the internet. But that's the kind of thing that sounds like it would come from a guy like that. And how much does this kind of camaraderie, loyalty, togetherness, Kevin, and then friends, how much that's a gift to the basketball program and to Todd Golden that could set this team up for years?
Yeah, it's about putting the front of the jersey out of putting the back of the jersey and building a culture. And it's fascinating because, as you know, buddy, in my 3-year sojourn in Indiana, that was something that probably Indiana had at Bob Knight under the 80s. And I think that's something that Florida is definitely trying to develop and part of, ascending to this blue blood status that they are right now, where you've got 3 national championships in the last 19 years. that the front of the jersey matters. Hey, look, and you've got now, going on, Billy Donovan, a Hall of Fame coach, right? Joakim Noah, Al Horford, who's still playing in the league. You've got a lot of history, a lot of tradition in this program now. Mike Miller, you're starting to develop something where that Florida brand and that front of the jersey really means something. And I think that's what Elijah is really trying to carry forth here with these other players that, hey, look, it means something to play at the University of Florida. There's a standard here. There's a culture here that we want the future to uphold in terms of being a year in and year out contender.
Kevin is so right on that. In that, one of the things, and I'm sure Kevin remembers it, when Todd had his initial press conference, was listening to him talk about the value of building the culture, and he talked two things that stood out to me at his initial press conference were building the culture and winning championships. I don't remember Mike White talking about culture. I don't remember Mike White talking about championships. And Todd has talked about him all 3 years he was here. Even that first year when they go 16 and 17, he's talking about championships. And I remember people saying, some of the people on the beat saying, I'll be here longer than Todd Golden. I think you were there, Kevin, when one of those incidents happened.
I remember Billy Napier. I don't quite remember Todd Golden. I remember that.
There was something very similar to that on a hot mic, and you look at him, the guy has done what he said he's going to do. He's built the culture to the point that kids want to be Gators. You look at what Walter Clayton is saying. He's on ESPN. He's talking about what I got across here means something. Yeah. Whoa. Okay. Walt wasn't just a hired mercenary. This is a guy that bought in 100%. And if you can get guys who can buy in and keep that going, it's what Dean Smith had going. It's what Coach K had going. The great John Wooden. The great coaches have that ability to build a culture, and Todd's done that.
Yeah, and I think Billy too. And looking at the SEC level, for example, right, for so many years, or when I first started covering Gator basketball in 2003, it was Florida and Kentucky. And what happened during the Mike White era was all of a sudden Auburn lapped them, right? Tennessee, they brought in Rick Barnes and stuff, and Florida became a middle of the pack SEC program. And Todd has brought that back now to where, hey, this is one of the heavyweights of the SEC at a time when the conference was at its historically best as well, which even made it more challenging. And now I think you're going to see year in and year out that this is going to be a team, when you talk about championships, that's going to be capable of winning SEC tournament championships like they did this year, SEC regular season championships. Todd has brought it back to that standard. And when you do that in one of the 4 power conferences in the country, then you're going to have a shot every year for making a run in the NCAA tournament as well.
Standard. You just said the right word, Kevin, and that is standard. And what was the standard during the Mike White years? Some might say I've got tweets and instant messages from maybe 100 of them of people saying, what was the standard other than mediocrity? And I'm not mad at Mike or anything like that. Mike's a good basketball coach, but he made a big mistake, and I wrote about it last week. You follow a legend, you got real issues. Typically, the guy that follows the legend, has a much better shot at it. Look at what has happened at Indiana. Still trying to find the next Bob Knight. Look at what happened, buddy, at Alabama football. They spent 30 years trying to find the next Bear Bryant.
I don't know. I kind of do think Gator fans have a right to be mad at Mike White. Now, unless he was invited to leave and shown the door, maybe they weren't happy with his performance. I don't know if I never picked up on that. Maybe you guys did, but I don't know. He left and went to the bad. He went across from Macy's to Kimball. I mean, he took the direct, and it's like, you can't win here. I'm gonna go to Georgia and win there. And so whatever he gets, he deserves. I know it's best for him, fine, all that. I don't wish him ill will. I don't want to see him do too good either.
Lon Kruger, though, did the same thing. Lon Kruger, when he missed out on Vince Carter, Lon Kruger resigned in a huff and said,
Yeah, but he didn't go to Georgia.
No, he didn't. But he left. He left in a huff and said, nobody will ever recruit the players it takes to win national championships.
Well, they put a lot of pressure
Florida.
on him. They put a lot of pressure on him to get that. He didn't get it.
Yeah.
Whatever his reason was, fine. I'm just saying, you just don't go to the opposition like that.
The rival, yeah.
I agree with that.
In a year, I understand.
I think, buddy, behind the scenes, I think Mike was in a family situation where he had to take what he could get. Let's put it that way. And I think living in Gainesville became a little untenable for him in the end, from what I'd heard. So he had to do what he had to do. I know he had, set out some feelers, I think, to Utah and Arizona before that, but that didn't work out, and he had to go where he had to go.
And let's face it, bud.
Grudges against people or players who go to. I just thought that was pretty tacky. I'm sorry if you had a family problem, but man, oh man, that's like treason to me.
Well, I agree with that because I can't stay. You know how I feel about the University of Georgia.
The Poodles, right, France?
The Poodles, exactly. You remember that. I'm the guy that nicknamed them the Poodles. I mean, there are people up in Athens that still hate my guts for naming them that. But here's the one thing about it. I will say this, and I'm not defending Mike, but Georgia offered him $4 million. And all I got to say is there aren't a lot of $4 million jobs out there. So when somebody offers you $4 million, you take it, even if it is the University of Georgia. And he's doing a good job there, and I wish him well. But he is never going to do what they've got going on here at the University of Florida. That we've won 3 national championships here. We've been to Kevin, 2 other Final Fours. With that, so that's 5 Final Fours
in the last 25 years, 6 if you include Lon's in '94.
Yeah, I mean, other than Kentucky, Florida is the single most successful basketball program in the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah,
and we don't have the issue that they have at Kentucky, which is up at Kentucky, you're just another coach until you've won 4 national championships.
Yeah. Now, we know this already because we have good sources. And, folks, if you want to know what's really happening, listen here. Listen to Kevin and Franz and read them. Brendan just says ESPN now. It says it's official that Xavian Lee is going to Florida. Okay. We're not at a point in time where we need to have affirmation from ESPN or somebody at Game Day or somebody or Paul Feim or whatever. The point is we kind of know our stuff around here. You guys do, especially when it comes to basketball. So this is we tried to tell people, and I know this sounds pompous, but why is it that ESPN was so blind and could not see what was in front of them? I mean, the odds were, I saw usually the chart on the odds, it's like 0.0004 that they could win those 4 games, and they won them. But it didn't shock. Did it shock any of you guys they won?
No.
Did it shock you they won?
No.
Oh, you're talking about what the second half comebacks in particular, buddy. I think
they won. They gave them a chance. No one. I've said this number. I hate to whine, but when I listen to his show for 1 hour, I hear 4 talking heads talking about the finals and what teams are going to win it and what coaches are the best in there. And they mention how great Duke is and that their guy might be the greatest of all time, Blue Devil. And talk about how great Alabama's got a good shot. Auburn's the best team. Never gave a breath to Florida. Now, look, I know I'm a little bit of a homer, but don't you think they'd at least have they don't know.
I have often referred to Florida as the Rodney Dangerfield of college basketball.
Yeah, that's been used a lot.
In that regard, in terms of the respect card and the blue blood card, and some of it has to do with obviously football. And Todd Golden is bringing it back to the standard that Billy Donovan had it. And I think when Billy Donovan was there, because of the sustainability in the 14 NCAA tournaments in 19 years, Florida was nationally relevant year in and year out. And as we've discussed in the Mike White era, they lost that a little bit, and Todd is bringing it back. And I think as that comes back, I think you will see more of the respect in terms of being afforded to Florida. But this is, what Todd has done. This is a program that deserves more respect. And I don't know if it's again the specter of football and it being known as a football school first. But you could say that about a lot of SEC programs. But I think what Todd did this year will go a long way in bringing that back and bringing Florida basketball back to the forefront on the national stage.
But you're so right, because you look at the fact that Walter Clayton. Let's talk football and basketball here. The first team All-America center on in football didn't even make first, second, or third team All-SEC voted by the coaches. The best basketball player in the country, and you can say what you want about Cooper Flagg, he's a great player. You can say what you want about Janai Broom, he's a great player, but the best basketball player in the country is war number 1 for the University of Florida, and that's Walter Clayton Jr., the best basketball player in the country, period.
Well, he didn't get any mention of anything. Here's the point I'm trying to make. I'm not saying I get everything right. I don't know that much about it. But it just is so obvious that commentators and certain people go out of their way to not give Florida credit. It's just look. We all have our little prejudices. I get it. I mean, we do that. But I mean, I'm gonna just say it like it is. Paul Feinbaum's a friend of mine. He's done a great job over the years. Got a great job. Whatever. Now the SEC's gotten too big for him to cover. There is no way he can do this. So he picks up bits and pieces. Whatever people tell him, Joe Blow from Kokomo comes, hey, I like Auburn's point guard. They're going to win it. Yeah, well, Auburn's young. He didn't know. He didn't have the sources that you guys have. He didn't do his homework. He didn't have the ability. He was at one time a journalist. But my whole argument about this, I don't want to sound like I'm get off my lawn guy, but the fact is that it was beyond disrespect. They blew the story. They totally blew the story. And you think about this, and I'm going to bring Allie in here quick with us. And the fact is that Paul, now this, again, I'm not making an accusation. I'm just pointing this out. Paul is moving back to Alabama. Okay?
For a reason.
Oh, well, but no, it's okay. I mean, I'm happy for him. I think he'll be happy there. But he's kind of like a fish out of water in Charlotte. But he's going back there. Who are going to be his neighbor? Who's going to cut his hair, take care of his car? He's going to naturally, like we all are, be more exposed to Alabama and Auburn people.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he was all over Auburn and Alabama.
Yeah.
He talked a whole half hour without mentioning Florida, and that's part of the game. That's part of it right there. While I bring in you guys, can you stay, Kevin? You got to go.
I'll stay for a little bit longer, but Paul, I will say this too, is that in the television business, as you know, and it's probably more so for someone like Duke on a national stage. I mean, ratings, they have, obviously marketers that. So there's a reason why they talk about Duke, because of the fact that Duke draws ratings,
and that's why,
and that's part of the reason why Florida gets some of the disrespect. There's a monetary reason to why TV stations do that and why they favor certain programs, just like as they would probably talk more about Florida football than they would about Florida basketball because of that. It's a ratings driven thing, and that's just the way of the world.
And we can't forget Dookie V.
The Florida story. That's my point. They missed it completely, right?
They did,
buddy. You can't forget Dookie V.
Let's say hello to this lady. She just been hustling back from a long day of a field trip just to get here to join a bunch of slugs like us to participate in this conversation. Allie, good welcome back. Thanks for making it. And we are going to just tell you real quick, thank you to our sponsors, Meldon Law. They do support the University of Florida. They also do a great job with the law business. I've got them handling a case for me. And they are the only official injury law firm of the University of Florida. Nobody is more pro-Gator than Jeffrey Meldon. We know all about his antics. We appreciate him. He was at every minute, and he's happy as he could be because he and Todd Golden are celebrating a natty, and it's great for him. So Meldon Law, need a little help, give him a call. 4 locations to serve you. Ocala, Gainesville, Wilson, and Lake City. Meldon Law, they won't back down. Allie, did you hear my rant?
I did not. What was your rant about? I literally just logged in.
It's the same old thing. It's nothing new.
Okay.
I just get aggravated that people just almost purposely try not to mention Florida during this whole ESPN whiffed on it. They whiffed on the story. And, I mean, look, it was a little bit of it was a big, the odds were against them. But Allie, you can see some of this coming. We talk every week.
Yeah.
These guys saw some of it coming. It's like I said, I just whole hour program about all the teams that could win it, and Florida was never mentioned.
Well, Seth Greenberg did on ESPN.
Yeah, that's different. I'm talking about guys who have their own shows.
Okay. Well, yeah, he doesn't have his own show, but he does sit at the game day desk. He picked Florida from the when he filled out his 64 team bracket. So,
right. And he's your neighbor in Tampa, so you had to get him in there.
He was my neighbor in Tampa. That's true. But I mean, he picked Florida all along. But I don't mind. Like, is it disrespectful to Florida? Probably. But I honestly love the underdog role, and probably that's from Urban Meyer's national championship time that I just relish that role.
Well, there's a dirty name, Urban Meyer. You can't mention that on the Feinbaum show. Get your mouth like soap. I mean, it's incredible the nasty things he says about Urban.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think that some of those guys contributed to that first national title. And so I'm okay playing the underdog. I think it's easier to motivate a team that feels disrespected than it is to motivate a team that thinks that they, deserve the world. But I do, Florida has been as good at college basketball as pretty much anybody else in the last 25 years. And I don't think that gets acknowledged in the way that it probably should.
Yeah. All right. Here's a big story tonight. You might not know this. All you do by now, you're so alert. And David Baldoff was reminding us, we talked about the first 10 minutes of the show. Big news is Todd Gold and the Gators got transferred from Princeton.
Yeah.
Xavian Lee as a Gator. Allie, you got to be a happy lady.
Yeah. I mean, so Todd Golden has been fantastic in the portal since he got to Florida. I mean, you look at the team that he just won with. And so, it's more of the same essentially, right? And who wouldn't want to come play basketball for the University of Florida right now? And you talk about how successful Todd Golden has been with his portal pickups. Imagine not being happy where you are or wanting to, move to a more marquee place, and Florida wants you. I can't imagine picking anybody else if Florida is interested in you right now. It sells itself.
Yep.
Florida is a marquee name, and it's the third largest state in the nation right now. And I would dare say the University of Florida ranks in the top 5 in the country in living alumni, the number of living alumni and stuff like. The one difference is this: we don't have people that punch for oil in our backyard. I mean, let's face it, we don't have that. But I think that the money is starting to flow Florida's way, and if Florida, what was it, buddy, that Bear Bryant used to call Florida in the '60s? He called us the sleeping giant.
Yeah, he said that a long time before spring camp. They call him a sleeping giant for everybody else.
But I think Florida is a sleeping giant when it comes to the money, because I'm starting to see it and hear it flowing for football. It's flowing now for basketball. I know that, for example, Tim Walton's got money for NIL money for softball, and gymnastics has all sorts.
Gymnastics has some. I heard some really interesting gymnastics numbers this weekend. Gymnastics.
Yeah, we're gonna have our gymnastics down by the zone here standing by in just a minute. But I wanted to get this out. The guy who wrote the money story is Kevin. He just wrote. He wrote all about the $200 million. Kevin, recap it for those.
But that doesn't take into account NIL, although it does take into account general contributions. Which was $48 million in general contributions to the school, which goes a long way in facilities and other. So I think it's a pretty generous donor base. Now, I mean, Texas had what, 330 million, but they had a one-time big donor for the Moody Center that accounted for that, which is their new basketball. But I think Florida, certainly in terms of donations to the university athletic department, is in the ballpark. But who knows, what the NIL donations are. That's not public. That's not privy. But I think, as Fran says, it's gaining momentum. We saw Gary Condren give a $1 million gift, right, to the basketball program and Todd Golden. And Todd Golden even admitted, hey, we need more. But, what's interesting, too, I think, Franz, and I talked to a parent of a football player. I won't mention his name, on a flight once. And he talked a lot about his son and how Georgia offered his son more money than Florida. But other factors, he said if it was simply about the money, he would have gone to Georgia. But Florida has other things to sell, including life after football. And I think in this Xavian Lee situation, too, because I had heard some rumblings that St. John's and Kansas were offering him more money. I think what Todd has to sell is look at the job he did with Walter Clayton, right? And the next level. And the fact that we can develop you into a first-round pick in the NBA draft where there's going to be more money down the road. And that's what Billy Donovan used to sell back in the day when the money was flowing under the table instead of over the table.
I'll make this last comment before I have to go. I think also one of the things that Todd Golden sold was, look at what happened the year before. Even though the Gators didn't win it, he had Zion Pullen and Walter Clayton playing together. And Zion Pullen's in the NBA now. Walter is going to be a number one pick. But he showed that you can play guys together. Mm-hmm. He's got a guy like Denzel Aberdeen, who I think next year is going to be an absolute stud. I think, put the ball in his hands, let him direct the show. And now you got two guys that can both shoot, they can both drive, and they can both pass. And Lord knows I've watched Xavian Lee play defense, and by gosh, the kid can flat out play. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden you got the same situation. I think that was a selling point as well.
And Franz, it takes pressure off both of them as being kind of that lead guard. You know what I mean? You can kind of share the load a little bit, play one off the ball in some stretches, and play. It doesn't put that pressure of being that dominant, on-ball point guard, which I think works very well in Todd's system because, Walter Clayton had a little help from Elijah Martin and from Denzel this past season too.
You don't have to be the only punter on the team.
We'll let you go, but I want Allie to get. We kind of missed the lead here. Allie just threw it out there, and nobody took the bait. The story she's heard about the money. I want some of that, Allie. Come on, tell me.
So I talked to somebody about gymnastics, and we have we got a transfer on the gymnastics team this year, and I was told she's getting paid $1 million for this season. And I was told it by somebody who contributes to the funds that go to women's sports in particular. And I mean, he thought it was a great investment and worth the time and effort. And I mean, I am a massive gymnastics fan, so I love this, and I want Florida to win a national title, starting tomorrow afternoon. They have the opportunity to, advance, but that just seems such a crazy large number to me for somebody who has limited eligibility left, and it's a non-revenue sport. And so that just seemed like such an insane amount of money, but he swears up and down it's true. I
believe it
100%, certainty, but that is when your non-revenue stars are pulling in that kind of money. What a time.
Yeah, no question.
We'll get Dan Bond on here, and Franz and Kevin, give me your final thoughts. You got 30 seconds apiece. Go ahead, Franz.
Great move for the Gators. Once again, Todd Golden reasserting himself as a coach that's going to be reckoned with for years to come. And again, that magic word I said before, culture. He's built the culture.
All right.
Hey, so I'll mention, since Allie mentioned the $1 million gymnast, 49 national champions. Can gymnastics be the 50th this weekend in Fort Worth? Why not Jenny Rowland? Maybe it's her time.
I mean, the best coach in women's gymnastics, without a doubt, in my mind. She is so good. They deserve it. What they've done this season with the injuries that they had. I mean, this team shouldn't be where it is based on what has happened since they, first set what they thought were going to be their lineups and stuff. It is unbelievable. This is the year that I think, I mean, she wins Coach of the Year a lot, right? But this is the year that I feel like she really, really earned that because they were dealing with a lot of things that they were not expecting to be.
I'm gonna call out Coach Spurrier on his 80th birthday this weekend. Happy birthday! I disagree with him when I said I think the rising tide raises all ships. You heard me say it about. I think it helps the other programs. And Steve says, "Nah, you can't worry about the other coaches." But he, of all people, Jenny Roller broke out her Steve Spurrier's gear, right, to motivate against Georgia. You think that's not carrying over? I think it does carry over. I'll always believe that it did.
That 06 football won because basketball won in April. Like, you will never not convince me that isn't exactly why that happened. Winning begets winning. And if you get that culture just rolling on that campus, and it has been rolling in non-revenue sports pretty consistently, for 30 years at this point, right? But it does take one of the revenue sports to do it, to really ramp everybody else up.
All right, so Billy Napier is on the clock, I guess, right?
There you go. All right, good night, friends.
Take care.
Good night. Kevin, thank you very much. Raymond and the Gainesville Sun got a good piece on the money parts. And here's a guy who is all fired up all the time, but particularly this weekend because he's going to be there. He's got his parking pass. He is Mr. Gymnastics, our own Dan Bond. Evening, Dan.
Hello. Hey, how you doing, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Good. Very excited about tomorrow. It's going to be an all-day event. I'm going to get down there early. Obviously, very excited to come off of being able to attend that basketball championship in San Antonio, and now I'm going to get a shot at seeing the women pull it off in gymnastics. And I've been coming out to that's really how I got involved, because it was in Fort Worth and they won the 3 titles in a row. And it's really a nice event, and it's nice to see it grow. As you had just pointed out, where you have an athlete making $1 million to transfer in is a long way from 10 years ago, for sure. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I like where they're sitting. They're going to be in the early session for the first time in a long time. And the way it worked out with 5 SEC teams out of the last 8, they know what they're against. It's all SEC in the early session, which is on television. So you can check it out. And the championship, this will be the second year that's on ABC. So you're getting national viewership at a level that you never had in gymnastics. And, you've got Alabama kind of knocked out Cal. They're in our bracket. You had Michigan State kind of knock out and come out second with LSU. So, I mean, you do have probably 6, 7 teams that really are very level and could win it all. But yeah, some of those years where Florida came in and they're number 1 overall seed, the Trinity Thomas years, it seems like they were just one bad call, one bad judge away from winning it all back-to-back years. So I'm really feeling good about this one. They have the nation's highest score the season. They have the highest score in 2 of the 4 apparatuses and 2 and 3 in the other. So, I mean, they have the engines to run the race and win it all. It's just about getting all those sticks down and having that moment Thursday. You have to just finish in the first 2 to advance to Saturday. And then you need that 198-2, 198-3. And they've done that multiple times. So if they can score that high, I think they hoist the trophy, as they say.
Sounds optimistic, Allie.
I mean, the capability is there. The potential is there. When you think about the SEC championship and that bar rotation, that bar rotation happens again. More than likely, you don't have the kind of off rotations that they had on other apparatus, so they have that bar rotation.
That to us non-gymnastics.
Okay, so in gymnastics, there are you've got your vault, you've got your bars, your beam, and your floor. And in women's gymnastics, you have 6 competitors and 5 scorers stick is the way that it works. So you're dropping your lowest score. And Florida finished with the highest overall bar score of any rotation. I believe, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but in NCAA history.
Yeah, highest
The
ever.
highest, I mean,
Yeah, that. If you can look that up and rewatch that routine,
they
was
had
insane.
2 10s, and this is a season last year. The Trinity Thomas years, I feel like we saw more 10s across college gymnastics, just across the board than we do now.
There was nothing back then.
This year, we are seeing really tight scoring. So there are less 10s given out nationally, not just for Florida, but just across the board. So the fact that we saw 2 bar scores that were 10s in that bar rotation for Florida and the SEC championship, and really you can argue we should have seen a third, is somewhat astounding. I mean, I almost feel like they didn't give us that third one because are you really going to have 3 10s in one bar rotation? But the capability is just off the charts. So Florida has a good day. Florida can absolutely win a national title. They don't even have to have like the best day that they have ever absolutely had in the history of, Florida gymnastics. They need to have equal to some of their best performances this season, which they're obviously capable of.
Well, maybe Walter Clayton can come over and do the floor for him or something,
I don't know. Leon Wong might have something to say about that. I think we should probably stick with her.
Yeah. So again, Kevin.
Yeah, it'll be good to send her off with a national title for sure.
And,
I mean,
would you kind of go through those? How many gymnasts total? 4, 5? How many are there?
On the roster or in each event?
How many are competing here?
6 each apparatus.
Oh, 6 each. Okay.
The top 5, and then in this level in the postseason, they have 4 judges. They drop the high and the low score, and they take the average. So that's how you get. That makes it even harder to get the 10, which Florida has more 10s than any other school this season, and there's been very, very limited.
I'll wait to your story, but tell me what do you expect the breakthroughs? You mentioned Leon Wong. We know about her, Allie. Take us through the individuals that have the best chance of scoring an eye. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Selena Harris. I mean, she's right up there with Leanne Wong. I mean, she's a vault machine, so that was great to add her to that roster. Several of them looked like 10s to me. She did finally get a couple 10s in that rotation. She's going to be great. You have Wong, who's all around. You've got some freshmen stepping up. So I mean, that's been. Really, floor, which was so strong at Florida for so long, has maybe been the weak point. And so that's going to be, you're going to have Victoria Wynn start off. She's been the lead every night. And when she hits, it seems like the rest of them kind of get in the rhythm and hit. They're going to start on beam, balance beam. So that's going to be good to get that out of the way. That's always the hardest
Makes
event.
me nervous.
So they get to start there.
Beam makes me nervous.
And watching that is wide as your phone, and they're flipping back and forth on it. It's crazy.
It's the mentally toughest apparatus for sure. But Florida has been so strong on the beam, and so I do think it has, it can have the opposite effect in that, like, it's just that juice that you need to keep going if you open with a strong beam series, and then you don't have it hanging over your head. So whatever happens, and then get to move on.
Right. Yeah, that puts the pressure on the rest of them if they come out of there with like a high score, then they're going to be thinking about that when they get up there the next rotation.
I don't love it when we close on beam ever in any of these rotations, because if you're having to make up ground and it's on an apparatus that is just the most mentally taxing, I think that's a tall task.
I'd say Missouri is someone to watch on beam. They have Helen, who is an All-American, and her routine is unique and very graceful, and she's gotten multiple 10s. So watching that, that's kind of the fun of the gymnastics, is that everybody kind of pulls for each other. The community is very nice. Like when we had the 2 injuries at Oklahoma, I was there, and the crowd was very, very polite and clapping and respectful when Sloan Blakely went down, and and Pilgrim got hurt on the bars to start off, and everybody was very it's not like football where like get them out of here. It's everybody's kind of nice about it. And the Thursday meet is also where you have the individual qualifier, so that's the time to see like Jade Carey, who's the team's not there, but she's a 2-time Olympian. So you have all those other athletes there. So it's definitely a great show to tune in and watch. And definitely Florida will make it to Saturday, and then you're kind of like reset and repeat. And you're going to have probably LSU, Oklahoma, Florida, and then that fourth spot. We'll see who that is on that bottom bracket. But I do like that you're going to eliminate a very high seed in that late rotation, because you have LSU and Utah and you have UCLA, and like only 2 out of there can
Right.
come out. So that'll be interesting to see who comes out of the night session. But you figure Florida, OU will come out of the day session.
And LSU won the SEC championship meet, but I don't know if you feel the same way I do. But I almost think that the teams that didn't win that, might have a slight advantage going into this. I think it's definitely difficult to beat the best 2 meets in a row, which is what we're asking any SEC team to do. So LSU won that. Florida, really put on a good meet. I would say 3 out of 4 rotations there. So, you put it all the way together and they can beat LSU.
And not having that night shift, it's an hour earlier over here. So Florida's always had that late. And with all the other pageantry and then the pressers afterwards, they don't get to the hotel till very late. I mean, they have the Friday off, but still, I like that they are the early.
That's a lot of gymnastics in 2 days too, which I think that maybe the average fan isn't aware of. But like when these girls are competing leading up to when they go to college, they're competing probably 6-ish meets a year. Right. And then, and if some of them are doing elite, maybe they've got a few more in there, but most of these girls aren't on the elite track growing up. There are a few, but there's less. That crossover is kind of a new thing between elite gymnastics and collegiate gymnastics. And so then you come here and they're doing a meet once a week for the entire season, which is far more than they're used to. But they're not doing them 2 days apart. 2 days apart is very little recovery time for something that it's the equivalent of playing 2 football games 2 days apart, really. And I think that's, I don't know, that makes this difficult.
Well, both of you are grassroots people, and the remaining time we have here, take a minute each. And I want to hear from Allie, who's got 4 daughters, all of whom have had aspirations to be gymnasts. And then Dan, you fell in love with it a long time ago. I've been following it, and your passion is coming through loud and clear. Allie, tell me about your daughters, what this has done for them in their terms of their inspiration and aspiration.
So, I mean, we're a giant gymnastics family now. This is not something I grew up doing. I did go watch gymnastics meets in college, mainly because Eric's teammates dated girls on the gymnastics team. So it was fun to go and support them, but it wasn't something I knew a whole lot about. But my daughters that are 10 now fell in love with it probably about 5 years old. And my 5-year-olds actually just had a tryout for the gymnastics team last week, and we'll find out in the next couple of days.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting a second mortgage payment now with gymnastics, but we got season tickets 3 or 4 years ago, and we try to go to as many meets as possible. And it is so cool for my daughters to get to watch up close and personal, feel like they know these athletes. I mean, just because they sit in the stands and watch them every single week. The girls, I think the girls' sports in general, the athletes are so approachable to young children. The access is incredible. And, lots of the UF girls come and they do a camp every summer, but they also work some of the other gymnastics camps around the country. So like they've had Leanne Wong as a counselor for camp, and, things that like have just really pushed their passion for the sport even more. Getting to see the Olympics last summer was huge for them too. And knowing like, oh wait, we see Leanne Wong there, and now we're going to see her at UF, and Trinity did so much for the program. It's really neat for young girls to have this to look up to.
I remember in 1976 Olympics, and all of a sudden every little girl wanted to be a gymnastics. It was the first time we'd heard of tens and things like that. An amazing thing that took happen there. But yeah, all right, it's your show now, Dan. Remind them again, times networks, etc.?
4:30 tomorrow Eastern time on ESPN2, and then on Saturday it'll be ABC. That one is, don't want to look ahead too much. Let me see. That one is 4 o'clock Eastern on ABC.
Okay. All right.
So that's, that'll be fun. Dickies Arena, which is a great venue for all things sports, all things concerts.
You wrote about
So
that
if you
last
ever
year, I
have,
think, some of the food you had there, as I remember.
yeah, it's super
Yeah.
nice. Again, Texas folks don't, skimp on the facilities out here. So that's all TCU money, and TCU Stadium and basketball arena is the same contractor that built Dickies Arena. So it has the same vibes of all the marble and crown molding and nice concessions and all that. So yeah, it's an all day thing. And then Friday, you got time to go. I'm trying to get Scott Carter out for some barbecue Friday, but we'll see if he'll do that.
He's everywhere, Dan. I see him popping up with Billy Napier the other day. No, with
Yeah, I got to meet Billy and Danny Werfel
with the
Monday,
Gators.
and
Here
then
he is.
when I was in Gainesville for the Texas softball series, I was fortunate enough to watch it from Tim Walton's office.
Yeah.
So I ran into Sam Walton in Oklahoma City back last year, and she invited me up there. So it's been a good 30 days
You're
as a
living
Gator
large.
fan.
You and Spurrier are living large. I said to Spurrier
Right,
today, I
right.
said, Steve, how much better can it get for you? I said, you're having a great life right now. Your name's on the stadium. Your son's coaching there. Your restaurant's doing great. You got a good life. He said, buddy, I've always had a good life. He's right. All right, guys, great job by both of you. Allie, thanks for the extra efforts again here. I appreciate it very much.
No problem, guys.
Don't forget, picking aside the Gators, Allie, and don't forget to read Dan on Gator Bait, all the gymnastics you need to know. Guys, great job. Thank you very much. All right.
All right. Good night, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right, Dan Bond and Allie Peak Wilbury, and I'm going to tell you about a group of people that you need to know about that do support our program here. We talk about them a lot. No one likes to have an MRI, right? And there's a company called Titan MRI and Imaging that if you don't know about, you ought to, because if you live in North Florida, you're going to need at some point an X-ray, a CAT scan. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And one thing, if you don't like going to have these MRIs, and who does like them, and you crawl inside that little tube, and oh man, tell me you don't get claustrophobic. Everybody does, and they're aware of that at Titan MRI and Imaging. They want you to have a comfortable experience. If you live in the North Florida area, particularly, they have 3 or 4 locations to serve you there. 2 in Gainesville, 1 in Valdosta, Lake City, soon in Ocala. And they acquired Highfield MRI. Joe Colorillo. He started Highfield in 1997. Now he's back in town and he's with them. And they have 3 locations, I said, to serve you. 2 in Gainesville, and also coming to Ocala soon. Offer the same great customer service. You can custom make your appointments. If you can't make it during the day when they're convenient for them, call them up and tell them you want to come at night. They'll figure out how to make it work like they do with your financing and your money and your insurance. If you don't have insurance, you can write a check. Otherwise, you can. They do accept insurance coverage. And through their convenient self-pay options, you can pay other ways. They offer, as I said, CT scans, X-rays, ultrasounds, easy scheduling. Check them out. Titan MRI and Imaging, thanks for being sponsoring this program. Folks, it's been a good night. If you didn't hear by now, thank you. If you certainly need to know, Florida got the point guard from Princeton. Big story. We've had 2 of the best basketball writers on the universe. With both Fran Spirit and Kevin Brockway talking about this basketball team is shaping up big time. About to make some other announcements about coaches. They're already going to be projected in the top 10 of the talent they got coming back, and we'll see what happens with the guys talking about going to the NBA and what have you. That's not a done deal yet. Of course, it was always great to hear from Allie. And Dan Bond's the best. He's always on top of anything to do with softball and gymnastics. It's a good team here. And you all, of course, make it great too. It's been a good show tonight. I really do appreciate you coming aboard and supporting the show. And we love hearing from you. I like hearing your thoughts, as a matter of fact, too, because we do care about what you say and we do listen to what you say, unlike other places. We do. And we like your information, your input. Love having you on the show. Have a great night. I'm Buddy Martin. Back tomorrow night on the Orange and Blue Buds.